Oh, there's a museum next to a power plant. I live in a house. A museum of powerhouses.
Alright, it's pretty obvious. This is clearly based off of Legacy of the Worthless. But instead of covering the most worthless archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh! History, we will be covering the best archetypes / decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! History and putting them in the museum. Starting off today, we have The Heat of the Inferno, Episode 1, Infernity.
The way we'll be ranking these archetypes is using my own ranking system, using the categories of consistency, damage, ceiling, defense, adaptability, and longevity. A usual deck may excel in one or a few of these categories, but fall short in other categories.
Consistency refers to how much and how often a deck can do what it tries to do. So basically, how often the deck can play effectively. A deck with a massive consistency would be a deck like Frog Paleozoic. It can do what it wants to do almost all the time, stunning the opponent with back row or toe or both. Damage refers to how much a deck can attack, break board, or deal damage. OTK or FTK potential is also a part of damage. A powerful damage deck is Cyber Dragon. With Power Fund, it can easily close games going second, and using Kaijus and Chimera attack, it can break boards. Ceiling refers to how much a deck can potentially do with a standard build. A deck with an exceptionally high ceiling would be a deck like Ojama, as the ability to end on crazy boards with cards like A to Z Dragon Muster and Armed Dragon Catapult Cannon. Defense refers to how much the deck can resist damage from the opponent, either by locking them down or playing tons of defensive stall options. A powerful defense deck would be Trap Tricks, locking the opponent down and not letting them play using their various trap hole cards and Reflection. Longevity refers to how long a deck can last in a duel. This combines its recovery options as well as a deck's natural tendency to make its board last, or how much advantage a deck can keep in hand and still make its boards. A deck with high longevity is Sky Strikers. They can constantly recover and gain new resources every turn. Finally, adaptability, which refers to how much a deck can adapt through formats or how much they can adapt in their own format to better fit certain matchups. An example of a deck with high adaptability is Burning Abyss. BA can change its playstyle in order to adapt and succeed in almost any format. It's been released in Duelist Alliance and it's been getting tops consistently in almost every format since then. A true powerhouse deck is a deck that excels in most or all of these categories. Now, with all that out of the way, let's start discussing Infernity, a 5Ds archetype used by my favorite character in 5Ds, this guy. We will be covering cards starting at the lowest level, so the first Infernity card we will look at is Infernity Mirage. Infernity Mirage is a level 1 Dark Fiend type monster with 0 attack and 0 defense. It has an effect which reads, this card cannot be special summoned from the graveyard. If you have no cards in your hand, you can tribute this card to select 2 Infernity monsters in your graveyard, special summon those monsters. So from this first card, we can already see the general themes of this archetype, which is obviously having no cards in your hand and graveyard recursion. Now, for all of you wondering, 66, how are you gonna get no cards in your hand? Are you playing Pot of Generosity or something? I will show you a cheeky play that Infernity players did when the deck was in its heyday, so that wasn't really much of a requirement. As for Mirage itself, it's not a bad card and definitely saw play in the Synchro, Xyz, and even Link builds of Infernity. Combined with the other Infernity cards, a Mirage could lead to many powerful plays, though it wouldn't exactly be the best in modern Infernity. However, in Synchro Infernity, you could copy this with 100 Eyes Dragon, which was actually used by the anime, which made this card pretty much staple. Not being able to be summoned back from the graveyard kinda sucks, but the free +1 more than makes up for it. Most builds of Synchro Infernity played that too. This next card was a key point of Synchro Infernity, Infernity Avenger. This was because it was an Infernity level 1 tuner in order to make 100 Eyes or Stardust Dragon. What? thought the effect was relevant, now just play as a tuner. Or maybe an attack waller if you really feel like it. It was usually a one-off to search. Pause the video to read the effect if you want. I'll just say it's super situational and inconsistent. This next card is super random, Infernity Randomizer. A level 1 Dark Warrior with 900 attack and an effect that reads, once per turn while you have no cards in your hand, you can draw one card and reveal it. For a monster card drawn with this effect, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the level of the monster times 200. For a spell trap card, you take 500 damage. This card could be played in Infernity General Turbo decks as a way to inflict tons of burn damage, but very risky because you could potentially take 500 damage if you dare draw into a spell or trap card, is what you might think when you look at this card at first glance. A random gimmicky burn card. But upon further investigation, you could see that it actually allows you to draw one card at essentially no cost. This was by no means a staple, but certain trap-heavy Infernity deck lists were building their decks around this card in order to draw into their powerful trap cards. Now, you might be wondering why Infernity Randomizer has light bulbs on its body, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And you're right, in the original OCG artwork, Randomizer has two guns on its side, displaying sort of a loose cannon aesthetic. I would say I like the TCG artwork on Avengers, so I don't know why they couldn't have a cool looking laser here. Just be wary of the new time rules. By the way, they had like a Russian roulette thing in the anime. It's been a long time since I watched 5Ds, so I don't really remember. Our first level 2 is Infernity Dwarf, a Dark Warrior monster with 800 attack and an effect that deals piercing damage, albeit you have to have no cards in hand, which I will from here on out refer to as the Infernity restriction. Piercing damage is fine, and this card applies it to all your monsters, not just itself. But being a mere 800 attack points and having a level which does not benefit XD or Synchro Infernity is just really meh and didn't see much competitive success. I guess you could copy this effect with 100 Eyes, but you're just being desperate at that point. By the way, there was an Asianized video on this card from a few years back. It was on the worst cards in Yu-Gi-Oh series, and he thought it was only itself that did the piercing damage. If that was the case, it'd be even worse. This is probably the worst Infernity, even as it is. I guess this would be the worst real-life Infernity card. There is an anime one that's worse though. It's called Infernity Pawn. I might make a separate discussion video just on that card. The level 2 that you would actually care about is the far more useful Infernity Beetle. Beetle is a dark insect tuner, which was a key selling point in XC's Infernity and Synchro Infernity. My script is trash. With the Infernity restriction, you contribute this card to special summon up to 2 more copies of Beetle from your deck, which was quite nifty as an effect, but the real focus of this card was the word tuner on it. This card could give you easy access to Trishula, one of the best synchros in Yu-Gi-Oh! History, really solidifying Infernity's position as the best deck in its prime. I would say Infernities are actually the best synchro deck of all time. Beetle itself, summoning 2 copies, that's really nice because you can just, synchro twice with it. And you can also get the brick dead copies out of your deck. It's pretty nice. Trish could cripple the opponent, and combining it with all your trap cards made absolutely unbreakable boards, also allowing you to take your opponent's opening hand. It later got cut from deck lists when Trish got banned, but the legacy that it left behind is not to be forgotten. In case you were wondering, you use Beetle, Archfiend, Necro, so that's 2 plus 4 plus 3 equals 9. Speaking of, on to the big stuff. Starting with Infernity Necromancer. Necromancer is a level 3 Dark Fiend monster with 0 attack and a beefy 2000 defense. Necromancer changes the defense position when it is normal summoned, and with the Infernity restriction, it can, once per turn, select an Infernity monster in the graveyard that is not Necromancer and special summon it. This effect is absolutely ridiculous. A non-hard once per turn monster reborn effect with a restriction that barely exists. Needless to say, it was almost impossible to find an Infernity list not maxing out on Necromancer. The combos this card enabled along with Archfiend and Launcher were pretty much endless. Heck, this card even gave Pendulums and FTK with Amazon as Archer. This card could do what Pre-Errata Dama Reborn did as a level 3 monster on its own. Not much to say really, just a really powerful card. An Infernity card that is not quite as good is Infernity Knight, a level 3 Dark Fiend monster with 1400 attack and 400 defense, and an effect that reads: when this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can discard 2 cards, special summon this card from your graveyard. Now I can see where they are going with this, having a monster that keeps coming back while you accomplish the setup of the main strategy of the deck, that being graveyard setup and having no cards in hand. But this card was too slow even by back then standards. Infernity was a very fast deck, and the technique I'm about to show you renders this card completely useless for clearing the hand. Dark Grepper does what this does on one turn, and better at that. I mean, it's not like Diagram existed back then to help you out. Don't play Knight. Alright, I'm gonna show you how you get no cards in hand the easy way. See this Necromancer? I'm just gonna put it face down right here. Oh, that's cheating? How will the opponent know? That's right, they don't. If they use MST, just negate with Barrier, or better yet, banish it with Trish before they can even use it. Or even better, use Shockmaster Calling Spell. And if you can't do that, scoop it up. It's not likely for MST to go through against Infernity, and they still have to hit the right back row. The play is cheating, but everyone did that in the format of Infernities, so it might as well have been legal. There's really no way for the opponent to know that, and the opponent's probably doing it too in Infernity format. As long as your match isn't being featured, oh that would suck, just be wary of the feature match. In later builds of Infernity with Pendulums, you just pendulum them out anyway, so it's fine. And with Links, like, it doesn't matter at that point, you just discard everything. You're playing a different deck with OP Infernity combos is all really at that point. And you search with Hairness. So the later builds don't really care, and the earlier builds, they were meta, so you set it, the opponent's doing the same thing. Moving on, we have Infernity Beast, a level 3 Dark Beast with 1600 attack and 1200 defense. This thing has an Armades effect with the Infernity restriction.
Oh my god, we just powered up Wildheart! This is revolutionary! 100 more attack points!
And by the way, the effect only applies when Beast is the one attacking, so no shenanigans here, it's not even like Dwarf. Next up we have our first level 4 monster, Infernity Patriarch, a Dark Fiend monster with 1000 attack and 2000 defense. It has an effect to special summon itself with the Infernity restriction, hard once per turn, because no other card has this effect. There would be so many consequences if this wasn't a hard once per turn. This card also has a Return of the Dragon Lord's Graveyard effect, which is much better than the first effect, as it actually helps the archetype as a whole. However, this effect does not make the card viable, as it is too situational and somewhat difficult to get into the grave. There are just much better options. Next up we have Infernity Guardian, a level 4 Dark Fiend monster with 1200 attack and 1700 defense, and an effect that reads: with the Infernity restriction, this face-up card cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. This is an effect you would want to see on a boss monster, not a crappy level 4 with a staggering 1200 attack. And be careful of that, Trish. Now we're on to the deck's mascot, and it's a real powerhouse card. This card is one of the best cards of the deck, and is what really holds the deck together. Of course, I'm talking about the one, the only, Infernity Archfiend, a card that is currently still limited in the TCG. Infernity Archfiend is a level 4 Dark Fiend with 1800 attack and 1200 defense. Its effect reads as follows: when you draw this card with the Infernity restriction, you can reveal this card, special summon this card from your hand. When this card is special summoned, you can add one Infernity card from your deck to your hand. Also with the Infernity restriction, of course. With the amount of graveyard recursion Infernity utilizes, Archfiend can easily be used many times in a single turn, and his first effect makes Archfiend a great top deck. This card was one of the best search cards in Yu-Gi-Oh history. Its level opens up Synchro and Xyz plays, and you can search powerful spells and traps with this card too. Necromancer can easily special summon this card, and the amount of combos you could do was absolutely insane. Even at 1, Archfiend opens up FTKs and Crazy Link boards currently. Not to mention, it being Archfiend lets it be searchable by Hairness, giving you easy access. Archfiend and Necromancer were the heart and soul of Infernities. They are a large part of what puts this deck in the Museum of Powerhouses. Time to sit through some tribute summon Infernities. Starting off, we have Infernity Archer, a level 6 Dark Fiend with 2000 attack and 1000 defense. Its effect is quite simple. It can attack directly with the Infernity restriction. Okay, now we have a random attack directly tribute monster. It's hard to see the actual direction of this deck. There's one group of cards that should probably be generic, having real basic effects with the no cards in hand clause, and all being completely useless in Infernities. There's one group that happens to be tuners, which are good because they are tuners. There's Randomizer, which is good for random reasons. And finally, there are the 3 good monsters that actually have a set playstyle. Luckily, the last 3 categories are good enough to craft an unstoppable monster, possibly the best synchro deck of all time. And later, just Randomizer, because random, along with the last category of the 3 good monsters, were able to make an Xyz deck that could put Dino Rabbit and Wind Up to shame. And for a while in the OCG, Necromancer and Archfiend alone, as the only Infernity monsters, were able to make a quite successful Link deck, using the Augusto Emerald in order to keep reviving Gaia Saber and make crazy boards. It just goes to show how just a few amazing cards with their own synergies can turn a garbage deck into a powerhouse deck. Oh, but there's 2 more monsters. Let's get through this quickly. Another level 6 Dark Fiend, this time with 2300 attack and 1000 defense. Infernity Destroyer. Boy, I hope this one has a cool effect with a name like Destroyer. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, it inflicts 1600 burn damage with the Infernity restriction. Woot! A weak, battle-based burn card in this combo archetype. And the sheer audacity of requiring a tribute just to do this makes this card absolutely amazing. Last monster for the day requires 2 tributes. Hey, Infernity have a main deck boss monster? No, it doesn't. Infernity General is a level 7 Dark Fiend monster with 2700 attack and 1500 defense. Hey, its stats are pretty good. With the Infernity restriction, you can banish this card from the graveyard to target 2 level 3 or lower Infernity monsters in your grave, special summon them, but their effects are negated. This card is interesting, I guess. You can make a rank 3 using its effect, but it requires too much setup and can easily be a brick. It's a level 7, so you can't even summon it, the only upside being the previously mentioned randomizer combo, and that last line of text really kills the card. The effects of the monsters you summon are negated, so we don't end on a high note, sadly. Wait! Infernity are a 5Ds archetype. That means they have a synchro. How could I forget? Infernity Doom Dragon is a level 8 Dark Dragon synchro monster with 3000 attack and 2400 defense. It requires a Dark Tuner along with 1 or more non-tuner monsters. Hey, this thing is semi-generic. Once per turn with the Infernity restriction, you can select... Wait, select? Oh no, a target. Okay. 1 monster your opponent controls. Destroy that monster and inflict damage to your opponent equal to half that monster's attack. This card cannot attack the turn you use this effect. Needless to say, Stardust, 100 Eyes, and many other level 8 synchros were better options. But this card did have a small niche in essentially being Cowboy for the deck, or I guess Dark Strike Fighter for the deck. It was played at the time. We have Scarlight now, so Doom Dragon is all but completely irrelevant. Maybe you can revive it for a rank 8 play, but there's no other level 8s though. Man, the synchro version of this deck would have sucked if it weren't for the great generic synchros. Moving on to spells, the first spell we will be looking at is Zero Max. It doesn't really sound or look or feel like an Infernity card. but it is. Zero Max is a normal spell card that, with the Infernity restriction, can select one Infernity monster in your grave, special summon it, and destroy all face-up monsters on the field with attack lower than the special summon monster's attack. You cannot enter your battle phase the turn you use this. This card is a monster reborn for the deck that nukes the field and restricts your battle phase. Since Infernity is a combo deck, you're nuking your own field if you use this as an extender, and you can't use a reborn card as a starter. Just add fuel to the fire, Archfiend is a when, so it misses timing. And you can't even OTK with this thing, no battle phase. Don't play Zero Max. Next spell still doesn't have an Infernity in the name, but at least Archfiend is in the artwork. It's called Wave Motion Inferno. Hey, are we gonna get a Wave Motion Cannon retrain? That card did pretty well, and Infernities have burn effects. No, it's not. Wave Motion Inferno is a continuous spell card, and with the Infernity restriction, face-up Infernity monsters you control gain 400 attack and defense. And you can send this spell to the graveyard to send your entire hand to the grave. The first effect is obviously Yami Power Creep, and the second effect does play into the themes of the deck, but it is a huge nag, and you don't want to run bricks. Ooh, a good spell card, and you know what it is. Limited to this day is Infernity Launcher, the first Infernity card to ever hit the Forbidden Limited list. Launcher is a continuous spell card that reads, once per turn, you can send an Infernity monster from your hand to the grave. You can send this card to the graveyard, then target up to 2 Infernity monsters in your grave, special summon them, with the Infernity restriction, of course. This first effect allows for graveyard setup and hand clearing. It also plays right into the second effect, which is just absolutely insane. It is a double reborn, and this one doesn't make Archfiend miss timing. Searching this with Archfiend is the linchpin of all your combos. Necromancer and Archfiend start the combo, but Launcher is what extends it into those crazy wars. This card is absolutely amazing and is most definitely a card you want to play. Think about it as a non-once per turn Goku rematch with extra benefit. With all the spells out of the way, Infernity has 6 traps. The first being the very creatively named Infernity Inferno. It's a normal trap card that lets you discard 2 cards to send 2 Infernity cards from your deck to the grave. It is a general rule of thumb that any card which says discard 2 isn't worth it, but that really isn't true here. Inferno is there to clear your hand, and a double foolish is really good. You don't want your stars to be trap cards, but that's talking about the deck from today's perspective. In the days of Synchro Infernity with Triple Trishula, the game was still much slower compared to it is now, and this card was actually quite staple in order to establish easy graveyard setup and power your plays next turn, using your Synchro monsters to OTK. The card ended up being much less relevant in later builds like Xyz Infernity, as faster decks made the card less viable, and it fell out of favor. Nevertheless, this card was very popular in Synchro Infernity, and saw play as a comeback option in Xyz Infernity. Next up we have Infernity Reflector. Reflector reads, activate only by discarding all the cards in your hand when an Infernity monster you control is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard. Select and special summon that monster back and do 1000 burn damage. This card is pretty bad, as monsters you want to revive probably aren't going to be destroyed by battle, and having to discard your hand is sort of a double-edged sword. Reflector's effect just isn't good enough. Next up we have another normal trap card, Infernity Force. It says, activate only when an Infernity monster is selected as an attack target, with the Infernity restriction. Destroy the attacking monster and reborn an Infernity monster. It's a pretty cool concept, but Infernities want to make Synchro Xyz or Link monsters, not you, Doom Dragon. Mirror Force is a much better option, along with this next card, Infernity Break. With the Infernity restriction, Break can target 1 Infernity card in your graveyard and 1 card your opponent controls, banish the first target, and if you do, destroy the second one. Infernity Break is clearly based off of Raigeki Break, as shown in the artwork and the effect. The cost of banishing Infernity from your grave is almost irrelevant, as you can banish useless monsters or even traps from your grave. And as we were shown by Dryden in Zoo format, a free pop can cripple many decks. With Archfiend, it is very possible to get 2 or even 3 breaks on your first turn, destroying back row or monsters, creating massive amounts of disruption. Though a modern build wouldn't play too many copies, Break was definitely a 2 or 3 of in Synchro Infernity and saw lots of play next season Infernity. Playing 1 or 2 copies wouldn't hurt even in Link Infernities. Break is a great card overall. The next card is a continuous trap, Phantom Hand, and it follows the theme of not looking like an Infernity card in any way. It says, once per turn, if you control a face-up Infernity monster, you can banish your entire hand, face down, until your next standby phase. Hold up. Banish face down? When did this thing come out? 2010? Banish face down existed in 2010? In fact, this thing actually says remove from play face down. Man, I thought that was a new concept. Back to the card, Phantom Hand requires you to control an Infernity monster. To do what? Clear your hand. And it gives no graveyard setup. And it's a slow trap. Inferno basically does the same thing but much better. Phantom Hand isn't very good. The last card in the deck, and probably the best card in the deck, Infernity Barrier. Limited to this day, and the reason we call blanket effect negates barriers. Infernity Barrier is a counter trap card that reads, when your opponent activates a spell/trap card or monster effect while you control a face-up attack position Infernity monster, and with the Infernity restriction, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Basically, this is Judgment that negates monsters' effects instead of summons, with a couple pretty relevant restrictions. Having to control an Infernity monster is largely irrelevant, as you won't have enough space for full Synchro/XC/Link fields anyways. This card was absolutely ridiculous at 3, giving your opponent essentially half a hand. Trish could banish the other half, Shock could stop the other half, etc. Barrier completely stops the opponent. Best card in the deck. It's the reason we call that new vampire card a barrier. Only people who haven't watched, liked, or subscribed call it a Judgment, as that is false.
Phew, and that concludes all of the cards. On to Ra'a's favorite part of the video, the ratings.
We will be ranking these out of 10. Let's get through this before the Inferno incinerates you.
Consistency gets a 10 on non-feature matches, but is also in a quantum superposition with 7 in the case of a feature match. The variant will also change this ranking by giving Infernity a high consistency rating because of the searchability of Archfiend in Pendulum Link build, and because formats were slower in the Synchro and Xyz era, meaning you could stall for a turn and use something like Inferno to ready all your plays. When you clear your hand, your combos go off. Damage gets a 9. When Infernity's combos go off, they OTK, Trish, rank 4 toolbox, and powerful links let the deck break boards easily. Relatively low amount of negation bait cards is the only thing keeping this from being a 10. Sealing is an easy 11 for Infernity. They can manage half your hand and negate or pop everything else you have. They can do shock loss with barriers and breaks. They can extra link you with link spam and have barrier or breaks. They can FTK you with barriers and strikes just to rub in your face. You could say this deck ceiling is the roof. Defense gets a 9, just like damage in Infernities. This is because Barrier and Break are great cards that can easily stun the opponent and defend you. The amount of swarming also acts as a great wall for yourself. This deck gets game losses or disqualifications for well-placed MSTs, so it misses out from a 10. Longevity gets a 7 in Synchro and Xyz Infernity, an 8 in Pendulum Infernity, and a 6 in Link Infernity. Since Synchro and Xyz Infernity largely relies on its traps, players can bait out the traps in order to outgrind Infernity. But the amount of spare copies of Synchro or Xyz monsters Infernities have cannot be overlooked. Being a graveyard-centric deck, These two variants could rebuild their boards, but not their back row. Pendulum Infernity gets 8 because, as for Link Infernity, the deck either tries to FTK or just burns the entire extra deck. The only reason this isn't ranked below 5 is the insane difficulty of trying to break the Link boards, and longevity doesn't really matter when you FTK, now does it? This ranking section already answers this last section, doesn't it? Infernity gets an easy 11 in adaptability. Just look at the variants, not light modifications within a format. No, Synchro Infernity, Xyz Infernity, Pendulum Infernity, and Link Infernity. The deck has a completely different playstyle which adapts to every new summoning mechanic, ban list, or even master rule, maintaining the core principles of using Archfiend, Necromancer, and Launcher along with their trap to amass absolutely insane boards and combos. Infernals are able to take advantage of everything this game has to offer. Wow, 2 11s in the first part. Infernals are just ridiculous, huh? There shouldn't be too many more 11s in the future, or maybe there will be. Only time will tell as we go through the museum. The Museum of Powerhouses. That's gonna be all for today, guys. Take care, you all. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this video and would like to watch more content, you can support the channel by liking and subscribing. Favorite this video, though I don't know if that feature exists anymore, and share this with your friends. I need all the promotion I can get. I really do hope that you enjoyed. I want to complete this museum, but I won't be able to do it without your help. Or maybe I will. Only time will tell as we go down this.